March 24, 2023. The courtroom was silent as 16-year-old Aiden Fucci stood before the judge waiting to hear the sentence that would define the rest of his life. The teenager whose crime stunned the nation was about to receive a punishment many argue is more terrifying than death itself. Life in prison with a chance of review after 25 years sounds merciful, but it is anything but. It is a promise of decades trapped in a system designed to erase identity and hope. By the end of this video you will understand why Fucci's future behind bars may be the most severe fate imaginable. What awaits him is a lifetime measured in cells, routines, and silent suffering alone. Stay with me, because this story will change how you see justice forever. Judge Arlie Smith stated during sentencing that Aiden Fucci's actions stood apart from nearly every juvenile case he had ever reviewed. The killing of 13-year-old Tristan Bailey involved more than 100 stab wounds delivered by a 14-year-old with no coherent motive. It was not driven by money. It was not driven by revenge. It was not driven by passion. There was simply no rational explanation. The judge described the behavior as profoundly disturbing and warned that the likelihood of rehabilitation was extremely low. That conclusion followed Fucci into adulthood and shaped every decision about his confinement. A life sentence imposed on a teenager does more than remove freedom. It erases a future before it can unfold. Fucci lost the chance to graduate, to work, to travel, to form relationships, and to build a family. The milestones that define identity became unreachable. His world narrowed to institutional schedules, controlled movement, and an identification number assigned by the state. While his peers aged, changed, and advanced, his existence stalled inside concrete and steel. Fucci remained in juvenile custody while awaiting his 18th birthday, but everyone understood that this period was temporary. When he entered the adult prison system, his environment would harden instantly. Florida's maximum security facilities impose psychological pressure that overwhelms experienced offenders, let alone someone who barely experienced adulthood. The transfer from juvenile housing to adult incarceration is often described as a second sentencing because the atmosphere becomes more hostile, more isolating, and more unforgiving. To understand his reality, it is necessary to understand Cross City Correctional Institution. Located in Dixie County, the prison opened in 1972 on the grounds of a former Air Force station. A place once dedicated to discipline and training now confines individuals deemed dangerous to society. Cross City holds more than 1,800 adult male inmates across multiple security levels. For Fucci, this means living among murderers, armed robbers, and career offenders who have spent decades adapting to prison culture. The facility operates with rigid institutional precision. Wake-up occurs at the same time each morning regardless of personal needs. Meals are distributed on schedule whether inmates are hungry or not. Recreation is limited and supervised. Movement requires authorization. Conversations may be monitored. Decisions about daily life are made by administrators. The system is designed to enforce compliance and predictability rather than growth. Contact with the outside world is tightly controlled. Phone calls are monitored and limited to 2 free 5-minute calls per month, with paid calls capped at 30 minutes. For a teenager raised on constant communication, these restrictions feel suffocating. Every word is recorded and reviewed, turning family communication into a regulated privilege rather than a connection. Visitation rules deepen isolation. Visitors over 12 must submit applications that can take weeks for approval. Visits occur only on weekends and holidays during fixed hours. Families must travel long distances, pass security screening, and sit in monitored rooms where physical contact is restricted. These interactions are not casual reunions. They are controlled encounters designed to reinforce state ownership over the inmate's body and time. Fucci's punishment is amplified by the absence of normal adolescence. While former classmates attend college, begin careers, and form relationships, his environment remains unchanged. Social media and news become reminders of a world progressing without him. Psychologists describe this phenomenon as social death, where an individual remains alive but detached from their generational cohort and social trajectory. The possibility of sentence review after 25 years intensifies psychological strain rather than easing it. Unlike inmates with no hope of release, Fucci must live with uncertainty. Freedom is theoretically possible but statistically improbable. This uncertainty forces him to maintain perfect behavior, participate in programs, and demonstrate remorse while knowing that the same court that doubted his rehabilitation will judge any future review. Hope and despair coexist, creating continuous psychological tension. Young offenders often face hostility within prison culture. Other inmates view juveniles convicted of violent crimes with suspicion and contempt, especially when the victim was a child. Staff may also carry personal judgments that influence daily treatment. Fucci's notoriety ensures his case details are widely known, making anonymity impossible and vulnerability constant. Each day begins before dawn when fluorescent lights flood the cells without warning. There is no gradual waking, only abrupt illumination signaling another identical day. Breakfast arrives through a slot in the cell door consisting of powdered eggs, watery oatmeal, and diluted coffee designed for sustenance rather than satisfaction. For someone who once chose his meals freely, every tray reinforces dependence and loss of control. After breakfast, the reality of confinement settles in. Fucci confronts the knowledge that he may spend more time incarcerated than he spent free. His brain continues developing, but the stimuli shaping it consist of surveillance, restriction, and exposure to criminal subculture. Instead of forming identity through education and relationships, his personality develops within institutional constraints. Privacy does not exist. Guards observe cells through windows. Movement is tracked. Conversations are recorded. Mail is read before delivery. There is nowhere to retreat, nowhere to process guilt, fear, or grief without observation. Constant surveillance erodes individuality and autonomy. Recreation provides a brief illusion of freedom. For 1 hour, inmates enter a concrete yard surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. The sky is visible but unreachable. While other teenagers drive, travel, and explore, Fucci walks in circles counting minutes until confinement resumes. Letters sent to Aiden Fucci reveal how the outside world continues to judge and condemn him. Unlike high-profile inmates who receive admiration or fan mail, most correspondence directed toward him expresses anger, disgust, and hostility. People from across the country write to remind him of Tristan Bailey, describing in vivid detail what they believe he deserves and how they hope prison will treat him. Each letter becomes another psychological weight, reinforcing that his crime defines him permanently and that forgiveness is unlikely. For a young inmate, this constant external condemnation compounds internal guilt and fear. Every message serves as proof that society has moved on while he remains frozen in a single moment of violence. The outside world remembers him only as the boy who committed an unthinkable act. There is no separation between identity and crime. His name becomes inseparable from what he did, and that stigma follows him into every interaction inside prison. Sleep is often the only escape from confinement, but even sleep becomes fragile. While other teenagers worry about school, relationships, or future plans, Fucci lies awake imagining decades of identical days stretching endlessly ahead. The darkness inside his cell is not peaceful. It is filled with the awareness that tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that will be the same again. This realization can become suffocating, especially for someone whose life should have been defined by change and growth. Experts describe this type of temporal imprisonment as one of the harshest aspects of long sentences. Time becomes both an enemy and a burden. Every passing year brings physical aging without meaningful life experiences. Fucci will age inside institutional walls, watching his youth disappear while the world outside continues evolving. Birthdays, holidays, and milestones lose meaning when they occur inside a controlled environment designed to remove individuality and agency. The appeals process offered a brief moment of hope, but it quickly dissolved. Fucci's legal team challenged the sentence, arguing for reconsideration and highlighting procedural issues. The appellate court ultimately upheld the original ruling, identifying only a minor clerical error that had no impact on the sentence itself. The correction was sent back to the lower court, but the life sentence remained unchanged. For someone searching desperately for any sign of change, this outcome reinforced the permanence of his punishment. Every failed appeal strengthens the psychological reality that his future is predetermined. The legal system that once offered hope becomes another reminder of finality. Each court decision confirms that the path ahead is fixed and that the possibility of release remains distant and uncertain. The process itself can be emotionally exhausting, forcing inmates to repeatedly confront the reality that nothing will change. The psychological environment inside prison intensifies these pressures. Daily life is structured to minimize autonomy and maximize compliance. Even small decisions such as when to eat, when to move, and when to sleep are dictated by institutional schedules. This constant external control gradually erodes personal identity and independence. Over time, inmates may begin to see themselves not as individuals but as components within a system designed to manage and contain them. For someone who entered the system as a teenager, this transformation occurs during critical developmental years. The brain continues developing into the mid-20s, and experiences during this period shape long-term personality and behavior. Fucci's formative years are dominated by confinement, surveillance, and exposure to prison culture. Instead of learning adult social roles through relationships and careers, he learns survival strategies within an institutional hierarchy. Isolation further amplifies psychological strain. Even when surrounded by other inmates, meaningful connection is rare. Trust is limited, vulnerability is dangerous, and emotional openness can be exploited. Young offenders often struggle to find their place within prison society, facing both suspicion and hostility. This social isolation can lead to withdrawal, depression, and a sense of emotional numbness. The constant awareness of being watched creates a persistent state of tension. Cameras, guards, and informants ensure that privacy is non-existent. Every action can be scrutinized, and any mistake can result in disciplinary measures. Living under perpetual observation prevents relaxation and reinforces the feeling that one's life is no longer one's own and as years pass. Institutional routines replace personal aspirations. Goals shift from long-term dreams to short-term survival. Avoiding conflict, following rules, and securing small privileges become the primary focus. The concept of a future outside prison becomes abstract, almost unreal, especially when release is uncertain and distant. For Fucci, the knowledge that his sentence might be reviewed after 25 years creates a paradox. Hope exists, but it is conditional and uncertain. He must demonstrate transformation in an environment that restricts growth. He must show remorse and maturity while being confined to conditions that limit emotional development. This contradiction creates ongoing psychological stress, as he is expected to evolve within a system that constrains evolution. The passage of time itself becomes a form of punishment. Each year adds to the distance between him and the world he once knew. Technology, culture, and society will change while he remains inside. If he ever re-enters society, he will face a world that evolved without him. This awareness can be disorienting and frightening, reinforcing the sense that his life trajectory has been permanently altered. In the end, Fucci's sentence represents more than incarceration. It represents a lifetime of controlled existence, psychological pressure, and social separation. The punishment extends beyond physical confinement into identity, time, and human connection. Every day reinforces the reality that his crime reshaped not only his victim's life, but his own future in irreversible ways. Here we are facing the reality of Aiden Fucci's existence. Decades of concrete corridors, recorded calls, and endless repetition lie ahead. No true chance of freedom, no promise of redemption, only time advancing while his life remains suspended. This is what justice becomes when death seems almost merciful for all the world.